Early in the day, it appeared the governor was going to stick to his threat to kill the budgets unless the House and Senate would agree to the governor's proposed 14% teacher and 10% state employee pay raises. Both houses had overwhelmingly approved the 16% and 12% pay raise budgets, and they didn't appear to be willing to change their mind. A day of negotiations between House Speaker Joe McCorkadale and the governor, though, ended in a compromise of 15% for teachers and 11% for state employees. The negotiations took most of the night. The clocks were unplugged and the 11th hour settlement wasn't reached until after midnight. It wasn't finally ratified until nearly 4 o'clock this morning. Governor James said afterward that he wasn't satisfied, but that he was convinced that the compromise was far better than any budget that might be hammered out in a special session. House Speaker Joe McCorkadale said he was pleased and was glad the governor finally decided to show some flexibility. Key among the compromises was the full funding of the Department of Youth Services in the education budget. DYS had been cut all of its money by a larger pay raise. Chris Grimshaw, WSFA TV News at the Capitol.
Government statistics show the Department of Defense signed $88 billion in business contracts last year. $17 billion of that went to small businesses. This year, the defense budget has increased, making that department one of the best agencies to do business with. But how can small businesses make deals with the defense and other federal agencies? Government officials say making the right contacts, knowing who to contact, understanding the contractual procedure, and what contracts are available are the best sources. But officials say these areas make up the biggest problems small businesses run into.
It's very difficult to find out what kind of requirements are coming up. It's difficult to find out the person you need to talk to. It's often difficult to find out how to get on a source list.
Now, the government and big corporations are trying to make it easier for small businesses to procure contracts. One way is through specialists whose expertise is in helping businessmen understand the bidding process, getting on the bidding and contact lists, and advising them of business opportunities. Officials say the government wants to continue doing business with small companies because it's good for competition and good for business. Kim Davis, WSFA TV News.
Investigators have been hampered in the recovery operation by recent heavy rains. Today, officials of the Federal Aviation Administration sifted through the wreckage in an effort to locate identification plates that may give a clue to the plane's owners. Officials did determine the plane is a Lockheed Lodestar, and they believe it was used to fly marijuana into the country from Colombia. Spokesmen say the plane could possibly carry a payload of over 5,000 pounds. Agents say they believe the craft was buried by smugglers after it crashed in a Wilcox County pasture that may have been used as a landing strip. ABI agents say they have received information that possibly the bodies of the pilot and one of the crew members are also buried in the area, but have found no evidence to back up that information. Officials plan to continue digging tomorrow to uncover more of the wreckage, and federal officials say they will return to continue their procedures to identify the owner. Mac Carmack, WSFA TV News in Wilcox County.
It's called Doppler radar, and although the National Weather Service, the FAA, and the Air Force have been working jointly for years to develop an elaborate Doppler system, this somewhat simpler version is the first to be tested in routine Weather Service use, and the Montgomery office is the only one in the country doing the testing.
Well, essentially, it will show us velocities versus intensity. We're primarily interested in the velocity or the motional direction of the rain droplets. So if we have a circulation system inside a storm, we will be able to measure not only the direction in which the particles are moving, but also the velocity of the particles. So we will be able to actually see circulations within individual thunderstorms, which we cannot do now with our regular radar.
By the way, the new Doppler radar unit and Montgomery's regular Weather Service radar are both Alabama products manufactured by Enterprise Electronics of Enterprise. More about this new storm spotting tool next time. I'm Dan Atkinson with WeatherBeat.
Cells within the ground clutter, which we're not familiar with.
A taped confession was taken from Berard by police while he was being questioned concerning the killings on the night of April 14, 1978. The confession came when ballistics tests arrived, which proved that the murder weapon, a .45 caliber pistol that Berard's father owned, had been the gun used to kill 16-year-old John Thompson and 14-year-old Jeffrey Smith. The boys were murdered at a Montgomery skating rink where they were employed. On the tape, Berard said that he went to the skating rink on the Atlanta highway late on Friday night. He said the rink had closed, but the two boys working inside let him in. He said that while they were cleaning up, he played pinball. And then when the two employees were getting ready to leave, he pulled out the .45 caliber pistol and began shooting them. Asked why, Berard's reply was, "I don't know." He said he just emptied the gun into them. Confession continued. Berard said he then ransacked the inside of the skating rink to make it look like a robbery had been committed. He said he then took the car which belonged to John Thompson and fled. He said he abandoned the car at Marshall Field off Perry Hill Road, then walked home. The prosecution, led by District Attorney Jimmy Evans, says it will prove Berard is guilty of capital murder. At the same time, Berard's defense attorney, Ira DeMed, says he will show the court that Berard is innocent, and innocent by reason of insanity. The trial continues tomorrow morning at 9 a.m. From the Montgomery County Courthouse, Dan Black, WSFA TV News.
For most of the day, it appeared the general fund and education budgets would die in a stalemate. The governor told members in a letter early in the day that he'd kill any budget that provided more than his proposed 14% teacher or 10% state employee pay raise. The legislature had sent him a budget with 16% and 12%. Both sides were standing firm. All during the day, many of the legislators met in small groups with the governor. Most of them with the House leadership were encouraging him to settle for a compromise, saying if he didn't, he would more than likely suffer a greater defeat in any special session to deal with the lost budgets. At about 8:30, the governor reportedly gave in to the compromise idea and a figure of 15% for teachers. The governor met with more House members to talk about any compromise pay figure. But hours later, when the budget reached the House floor, members supporting lunchroom workers and junior and technical college workers were ready to kill the bill because those workers had been left out of the pay raises. If the clock stopped, action was put on a near hour-long hold. More meetings with the governor resulted in a second compromise offer, including lunchroom and two-year college workers in the pay raise at the expense of the governor's $2 million war on illiteracy. The budget then flew through the House, with lawmakers cheering the last-minute settlement. State employees were next. The governor sent back a change, leaving the employees at a 10% hike, 2% lower than that passed by the legislature earlier this session. That was real unpopular in the House. Things stopped again. There were more meetings with the governor, and within an hour, the difference was split at 11%. The House agreed compromise, then worked its way over to the Senate. The Senate had the option of agreeing to the settlement or killing it. Even though some senators complained the Senate had been left out of the negotiations, they agreed to the compromise almost 3-1. The final vote on the package of bills was taken at about 3:45 this morning. The governor said he wasn't real pleased that he had to compromise, but he said he understood the risk that the larger pay raises would probably have a better shot at passing in a special session. House Speaker Joe McCorkadale was comfortable with the settlement, saying not only did the compromise find itself in an affordable position, but the flexibility shown by the governor will create a much better atmosphere in a tentative special session, which might come in about a month. That would be to deal with packages on governmental reform issues killed during this session. In the end, all of the sides generally agreed that the budget battle was best ended with the compromise, even though it took an entire regular session to work out the single % difference on the pay raise issue. Chris Grimshaw, WSFA TV News at the Capitol.
House Bill 50, as it was introduced, simply said that all utilities would pay the balance that they had collected during 81, and they'd go on a quarterly pay system. In other words, at the end of each quarter, they had 30 days to remit it to the state general fund. Now, that bill drew all sorts of opposition from the utilities. Power Company drew up a new bill, which is the substitute, which is what the Senate had last night. Now, that bill simply repeals the 81 Act and it gives the utilities, once it passed, 30 days to pay the balance that they collected in 81.
Temporary layoffs may be the only solution, at least until October 1st, when the Commission begins its new fiscal year.
We would consider, of course, exempt and unclassified personnel. Then following that would be merit system employees.
97 of 124 PSC employees are covered by the merit system. Folsom says if layoffs occur, they'll be across the board. Gina Gregory, WSFA TV News.
In fact, we cannot.
Commissioner Jim Folsom says the PSC is operating in a tight position, and with the loss of some $800,000 in funds, the situation won't get any better this summer. He says a plan for layoffs has been discussed, but he says he hopes no one has to be sent home. Folsom says other alternatives are being discussed, such as voluntary salary cuts by staff members and transferring the Enforcement Division to Public Safety. Commissioner Lynn Greer says there was a lot of misunderstanding about the Senate bill. He says the main reason the bill was drawn up in the first place was to correct a cash flow problem that the Commission has had for years.
But we weren't asking for any new money. The 81 legislature gave us $4.5 million. We're only going to collect somewhere around $3.2 million of that. And what this bill would have provided last night for us to collect the remainder of those funds.
The commissioners have scheduled a meeting with Governor James on Thursday to discuss some of those possible alternatives. But running at about $200,000 short right now, the commissioners all agree they have to come up with a plan quickly just to continue operating. Gina Gregory, WSFA TV News at the Public Service Commission.
Many of the classroom teachers will tell you that discipline returning to the classroom is a tremendous item to them. Second thing is a pupil ratio, teacher ratio, smaller ratio is indeed. So it really, President Reagan, he's a personal friend of mine.
If I did not feel that I legitimately fell into that category. But I think that it's necessary to make that clarification at this moment. Right to do it, and I similarly respect the right to understand that that which exists is not likely to be dismantled because the communities served by these junior colleges.
Despite the threat of a deadlock on the pay raise issue, the possibility of a compromise prompted House Speaker Joe McCorkadale and the Lieutenant Governor to pull the plugs on the chamber clocks. Stopping the clocks essentially froze time and prevented the session from automatically ending at midnight long before the budget compromise was finalized. The compromise, worked out between the governor and primarily the House leadership, provided teachers with a 15% pay hike. That's in between the governor's proposed 14% and the 16% supported by the AEA. And state employees received a compromise of 11%. Both pay raise compromises were finalized at about 3:30 this morning. State judges will get a pay raise ranging from 18 to 31%. That raise took effect automatically when the Senate Rules Committee refused 4-3 to report the judicial compensation recommendation out and allow the full Senate the option of joining the House in rejecting the proposal. Had the report been rejected, the judges would have been in line for the same 11% granted state employees. The Public Service Commission lost its effort to have the Senate pass a bill that would have given the PSC an extra $1.4 million this year. Earlier, the PSC said it would have to lay off a number of employees to make ends meet this year. Early this morning, the governor said he intended to pocket veto a bill that would have levied a token $10 fine for speeding up to 70 miles an hour on the interstate. The legislators have now gone home, and the regular session for 1982 is over, but the lawmakers will more than likely be back within the month. Governor James says he intends to call a special session this summer to deal with a number of governmental reform issues that he proposed that died during the regular session. Among them, his proposed reduction in state employee holidays and retirement benefits, control over higher education, and about 30 bills in the governor's crime law reform package. Chris Grimshaw, WSFA TV News.
Doing business with the federal government and large corporations can mean big business and big bucks for small businessmen. Officials say most of the products the government buys come from small businesses.
Early, came an hour early, and
he says it earns about $1 million annually, but he, like other business owners, wants to double his operation and in turn hire more people. But Martin has found doing business with the government isn't so easy.
Very lengthy process, a lot of paper in the initial stages. From what I understand, once you get into the business, then it becomes routine. You have to be established. You have to establish yourself, and that is the part that is the hardest to do.
But Martin says his fact-finding mission at today's conference will alleviate many contractual problems. He and several other Alabama businessmen have made the necessary contacts to do business with the government and large corporations, which officials say is one of the first steps in the right direction. Kim Davis, WSFA TV News.
I submit to you that they can't, because they've been part, because of what they've done and not done. We've not had the right sort of leadership in Alabama. But I look at Alabama as a state that has never realized its potential.
Fulmer is not officially a candidate, but continually spoke this afternoon of what he will do in his campaign. Fulmer says his will be a positive campaign and says his ability to work with business and politics will help. Following Fulmer's address, McMillan came to the stand saying it's time to focus attention on different approaches to helping Alabama progress. McMillan says he's tired of Alabama being ranked last among southern states.
All too often we have been willing to settle for the mediocre. And if we settle for mediocrity in the public sector,
he says
Alabama
he believes
will
in working
continue
with
out
people.
of the 14
McMillan says state leaders of the past have exploited the prejudices, fears, frustrations, and concerns of Alabamians. Though he is not a candidate yet, he makes it clear he's very interested in the governor's race. Tom Foreman, WSFA TV News.
Look around. There are racks and racks full of clothes. Everything you need to fill your closet and be right in style. But before you buy something, save yourself some time and money by finding out what colors are best for you. Color is important because not everyone looks his or her best in, say, red or yellow. Color Secrets advisors say everyone has a season, winter, fall, spring, or summer, and each season has certain colors that are most attractive to people in those groups.
Certain people have always known that they look nice in some colors and not so good in other colors. What we do is analyze their hair tones, their skin tones, and their eye tones, and show them the colors that look the best on them and why they look the best. We also show them the ones that look bad on them and why they look bad. They tend to make them look older. They bring out ugly shadows in the bottom of your face. They show things that you would rather people not see. The right colors come up to your face and do nice things for you.
Winter and summer are cool seasons. They have blue undertones. Spring and autumn are warm seasons and have the yellow-gold undertones to the colors.
You told me I am a summer. What does that mean when somebody is a summer?
That means that you wear colors that have blue and rose undertones. You cannot wear the golden yellows and the oranges. It means you have a very soft look about you. You're not as vivid as I am. I'm a winter and I wear bright colors. The word for summer is soft and muted, but nothing golden.
Once the color analysis is completed for clothes, the advisors help clients choose the best makeup shades for their skin tones. Gina Gregory, WSFA TV News. Makeup for a woman is one of the most important factors in her total look. The colors she chooses and the way she applies it all affect the final outcome.
Well, as far as my philosophy goes for makeup, I believe that the eyes are the most important, and then the lips, and then the cheeks. So most of my emphasis is on the eyes.
What do you do to make eyes stand out or make them look as the best that they can?
Well, As far as my makeup goes, I like to use a lot of brown for eyes, especially. It creates sort of a sculptured look.
Shorter, that's the direction hairstyles are going. Stylist Bobby Ellison says shorter, curly styles are not only becoming on many people, but they're easier to take care of as well.
I would say majority of working women are taking better care of themselves with the shorter or medium length hair. Curly, fluffy, bouncy.
The new styles will be short as it normally do during the summer. But the basic difference this summer will, the sides and the back will be tapered real close, but the top will be left much longer to give you much more volume, a much smoother chic look, which is called the punk chic look for the spring and summer.
Gina Gregory, WSFA TV News.
Dr. Rex Rayner used the plane last December to travel to New York to finalize a bond issue for the state. His wife joined him. After the trip, Mrs. Mary Elizabeth Ward of Prattville asked the Ethics Commission if this violated any ethics laws. The commission ruled that as long as the state official was on official business, his spouse could join him if space was available. The commission ruled there aren't any laws preventing a family member from riding in a state car used for official business, but the same would have to be applied to state airplanes. The commission said there are also a number of occasions where an official's wife is expected to join her husband, and that it would be unreasonable to expect the official to travel in the state plane and have his wife reach the same destination by commercial flight. The commission also said it had ruled earlier that the governor's wife could use the state plane for official business, and that ruling would have to be equally applied to all state officials, regardless of what branch of government they're in. Ethics Commission Executive Director Melvin Cooper said the laws governing the use of state vehicles was passed long before the Wright brothers got off the ground, so there aren't any laws dealing specifically with the use of state airplanes. Chris Grimshaw, WSFA TV News.
Public officials must file by this Friday at 5 p.m. intention. The primary concern of most Alabamians right now is the unemployment situation, and I feel that I know that subject very intimately. I've worked with education in Alabama. I've worked with manufacturers in the private sector and trying to create jobs here in Alabama. That definitely will be my strong point. We've got to begin to rifle shot our industry selection. I fear that our practice in Alabama here before has been a shotgun approach to seeking new or encouraging industry to expand. Productive and competitive in the world markets with the export of our domestically produced or cultivated products.
Year of 1970, when I had such a difficult time, I not only been elected once but 3 times, and Dr. Learning was elected once, and now, as the polls are showing, I am the leading candidate at the present time. And if that continues to be that way, I will be a candidate.
The committee is composed of 66 members from all over the state. They represent grade school teachers, college instructors, and administrators. Their job for the next 6 years will be to examine the courses of study currently offered in state schools and determine what strengths and weaknesses exist. Then they'll try to find ways to improve those courses, setting minimum guidelines for what must be taught. The committee members were selected by State Superintendent of Education Dr. Wayne Teague and approved by the State School Board. The executive secretary for the committee, Joanna Crane, says committee members will return to their schools around the state to try to get local input on how to revise current guidelines for study.
Plus, address ourselves to some of the other problems in instruction and in curriculum development that would help the students of Alabama.
So it is this committee that for the next 6 years will determine what Alabama school children will be taught and hopefully what they will learn. Tom Foreman, WSFA TV News.
The defense led by former U.S. Attorney Ira DeMette, presented testimony from nearly a dozen witnesses, most of whom were either friends or neighbors of Berard and his family. A former schoolmate of Berard's testified that Berard had tried out for football while in school, but quit because he didn't like the physical contact of the sport. He also said on numerous occasions Berard would run away from schoolyard fights. A neighbor testified that Berard was a quiet boy who never got into trouble. He got along well with other neighbors. A friend of the family told the court that she met Berard just a few days before the murders and said he acted like he was spaced out or on drugs. A girl that had been friends with Berard testified that he once told her that he needed psychiatric help. And on one occasion when they were together in a car at the skating rink when the murders occurred, he jumped out of the car and yelled out that he hated the world. She went on saying that we don't need you to say it. At this hour, a psychologist had administered a family of psychiatric tests to Berard is on the witness stand and as the part of the defense attorney's case. From Montgomery County Courthouse, Dan Black, WSFA TV.
Knoxville's World's Fair is getting its first customers this week as it prepares for Saturday's opening. Several thousand fair employees, construction workers, and their families are getting a chance to look around the site as tour guides, concessionaires, and gate operators get a chance to rehearse with thousands of visitors, no matter how young they really are. The pre-fair preview will run until Thursday night, building up to 20,000 invited guests.
We're going to close the fair site on Friday and do all of our last-minute preparations, all of our painting, and all the last-minute touch-ups that need to be done in time for the opening on Saturday.
The 72-acre fair site has come a long way from the dilapidated railroad yard it used to be. When the idea of an exposition was first introduced in the mid-70s, many Knoxvillians scoffed. How could Knoxville host a World's Fair? But now the attitude has changed.
As it's progressed, I've gotten enthused about it. I'm excited about it. Yes, real excited. I'm going to be here Saturday morning.
Construction workers are working around the clock to prepare for Saturday's predicted 100,000 visitors. Even at that, fair officials say the site will only be 95% complete.
Georgia and Parker, I'll have your head. Losing because I knew.
Charge to this State Courses of Study Committee.
Very fast, because we all
by law, we're supposed to develop revisions of the State Courses of Study, which come up for textbook adoption, and the State Course of Study must be completed before that state textbook adoption occurs. So we will hopefully revise a state course of study each year for 6 years, plus address ourselves to some of the other problems in instruction and in curriculum development that would help the students of Alabama. Opposed? To your turn. He or she may be reelected. Hospital, please raise your right.
I think we'll see a new track record. Everybody's got their cars going a little bit faster again this year, and if we have a good day, I think we'll see a track record, maybe 198 or a little better.
Well, I feel like they're going to run pretty good. You know, everywhere we've been, they just keep running faster and faster, and I feel like that, you know, being Talladega is a wide open racetrack and it's the fastest place we run anyway. If they don't get to a record, it's going to be awful close to it because they're going to really run fast.
One of the favorites of these races would be the NASCAR world champion Aaron Waltrip. He knows that a win at Talladega will help boost his chances of another
Picture the car that week in and week out is consistently in the front and consistently the car that you got to beat if you want to win the race. We always have to compete against some different car, but it's always our car that's the consistent one and always there every week.
Qualifying. When the Berard trial began yesterday, defense attorney Aaron DeMint told the jury that his client did commit the crimes of which he's charged. However, DeMint says his client is innocent because he said the Berard was insane to the 1917 skating record of John Piper and Jeffrey Smith committed. The verdict of the Berard lies in the hands of DeMint and his assistant Ron Wise. Today, DeMint presented testimony from nearly a dozen witnesses, most of the neighbors and friends of Berard and his family. The testimony from each of the witnesses was almost identical. They all said that Berard was quiet and a loner. They also described him as a good boy that never got into trouble. Several witnesses told me they were shocked upon learning that Berard had been arrested for the murder. Throughout the trial, the parents of both the victims have sat quietly, listening to all of the testimony which was presented 4 years ago. Berard was convicted and sentenced to die in the electric chair. However, a new trial was ordered when Alabama's death penalty was overturned. More testimony is scheduled. From the Montgomery County Courthouse, Dan Black, WSFA TV News.
Yeah, y'all want out?
Sitting where?
That's. It looked like it had a brand new paint job on it, or one that wasn't too old.
You can tell that already.
Must be back in 1980.
leave lead where you want. Damn dirt does.
That dog needs to hit it. You can find
we're sliding sideways. Yeah, I thought that was a snake.
Hey, don't wait.
I thought that was one of them damn artillery simulators again.
Got leaking now. This happened back in December.
God damn, boy! Hey, Jerry, while you're there, go ahead and pull that panel out for him.
You get that panel out, you get that.
Use these now for that shit.
Would there be a number on the panel?
He says the aircraft serial number's on the panel.
Passenger seats aboard. Probably just shelled out, you know, where they could haul.
No, not a data plate. All I saw, you got some identification on the prop. You can tell where the props come from. And but I didn't see the data plate on the prop.
I think they can be lost in.
I don't see no way.
Y'all find this most of the time, an aircraft like this where the plates have been removed.
You know, I'll bet that they had everything moved before they made the trip. If I was going to do that, that's what I'd do.
Happy to have you with us, and we hope you enjoy your lunch.
Officers say Jackson left the Trailways bus station around 10:30 last night, headed to Madison Park. They say Jackson had radioed his dispatcher to inquire about the cost of cab fare from the bus station to an unfamiliar section of Madison Park. His beaten body was found by a passerby around 6:15 this morning. The grassy area where the body was found is located in a section of Montgomery called Dagger Hole. State troopers found Jackson's taxi around 1 o'clock this morning on Interstate 65 south near Fort Deposit. Authorities say the radio microphone cord had been cut and the cab was out of gasoline. Workers at the Yellow Cab Company in Montgomery say they were shocked to learn about the murder. Operator Grover Adams says Jackson was a good worker.
Just a working fella. Works good every day and had no problems with him at all. Just a fine man is all I can say. Just a good man.
In the meantime, police say they are looking for several people in connection with the murder. They say robbery may have been the motive. Officers say they have several leads and are handling the case as a routine homicide. One officer says it may take several days before a suspect is arrested and charged with the murder. Kim Davis, WSFA TV News.
Regular weather radar shows where it's raining and how hard it's raining. That's important information. But the Doppler radar being tested at Danley Field goes beyond that. It measures the speed and direction of raindrops as they're blown about by the wind. So it presents to the trained eye a picture of a storm's changing wind patterns. And here's what that means for you and me.
Well, we're hoping that it will give us much more lead time with our warnings. If we can be reasonably sure that there is a circulation, a mesocyclone within inside a thunderstorm, we could possibly even detect it before the funnel-shaped cloud even formed. And if we can do this, it will increase our lead time, so our warnings will come out with much more lead time. Plus, the second factor is that we'll be more reasonably sure that we know what we're looking at without having to wait on it to form, touch down, do some damage, and have the public report it to us to verify what we're looking at.
I'm Dan Atkinson with WeatherBeat.
Very few of us have an opportunity to really sit in a court of law and understand exactly what goes on and understand exactly what our law system is all about in this country. During this week's observance, the Alabama Bar Association and the court system have been running public service announcements throughout the state explaining exactly what the court system does for our democratic society.
A steering committee of court officials, lawyers, and media representatives developed the commercials to instill a greater awareness of and respect for the law and the institutions that enforce them.
For theft, this court sentences you to 8 years in prison.
During the
This
week, many
message is from
representatives
your
of the
court system
and
and
the
your
Bar
local
Association
attorneys
have
who are
talked to
members of
school
the Alabama
assemblies
State
about
Bar.
the judicial system. Students have taken tours of courtrooms and observed a mock court-martial at Montgomery's Maxwell Air Force Base.
A banquet will be held tonight at the Maxwell Air Force Officers Club to present awards to outstanding Alabama citizens. Tomorrow, being proclaimed Law Day, will wind up the week, but officials of the court system and the Alabama Bar Association hope to repeat it again next year and make this type week an annual affair. Mac Carmack, WSFA TV News.
Resolution from our state board and the Association for Retarded Citizens, thanking you for supporting our ARC and for supporting the work for retarded citizens of this time.
Yes, I truly appreciate this. This is one of the nicer honors that I've had an opportunity to receive in my 3.5 years as Attorney General. My office and I personally feel that the needs of the mentally retarded in the state of Alabama are needs that have sometimes gone.
Knoxville's World's Fair is getting its first customers this week as it prepares for Saturday's opening. Several thousand fair employees, construction workers, and their families are getting a chance to look around the site as tour guides, concessionaires, and gate operators get a chance to rehearse with thousands of visitors, no matter how young they really are. The pre-fair preview will run until Thursday night, building up to 20,000 invited guests.
We're going to close the fair site on Friday and do all of our last-minute preparations, all of our painting, and all the last-minute touch-ups that need to be done in time for the opening on Saturday.
The 72-acre fair site has come a long way from the dilapidated railroad yard it used to be. When the idea of an exposition was first introduced in the mid-70s, many Knoxvillians scoffed. How could Knoxville host a World's Fair? But now the attitude has changed.
As it's progressed, I've gotten enthused about it. I'm excited about it. Yes, real excited. I'm going to be here Saturday morning.
Construction workers are working around the clock to prepare for Saturday's predicted 100,000 visitors. Even at that, fair officials say the site will only be 95% complete.
The Braves call on veteran Phil Niekro to break the losing slump, and everything was looking good until the third. That's when the Pirates scored 5 runs after 2 outs.
The big blow, this bases loaded single to center by Jason Thompson, driving in 2 and breaking the ice. At the end of 3, the Bucks had a 5-0 lead. Atlanta got 1 in the 4th and then hit for 2 more in the 6th when Claudell Washington broke out of a batting slump with his first home run of the year. This 2-run shot to right off Eddie Sullivan. The Braves then took the lead in the 8th on back-to-back home runs by Dale Murphy and Bob Horner. The first, this 2-run shot by Murphy, just out of the reach of left fielder Lee Lacy. Horner followed with 1 to center, and Atlanta had the lead at 6-5. But Dave Parker tied it for the Pirates in the 9th. His single to right here scored Omar Moreno. That made it 6-all. Atlanta then pulls it out in the 10th with Horner on third after a Chris Chambliss double. Pinch hitter Bob Watson hits this tough grounder to short. Del Barra can't find the handle, and the Braves go on to win it 7-6. Gene Garber gets the win in relief. Rod Scurry suffered the loss. Braves meet the Cubs tonight in Atlanta. Rick Pons, WSFA TV Sports.
And I think we've got to address what is meaningful regulation. I'm today asking this time that that's the best place to keep those. We've got to put the thrust of this commission back into the...
I also would point out that Mr. Kemp is simply playing politics within that proposed settlement. Kemp is a politician, and he's running for lieutenant governor, and he's looking for a campaign issue. Now, the commission came to Alabama Power Company, and he asked us to sit down and
Officers say 46-year-old Elbert Jackson left the Trailways bus station around 10:30 last night, headed to Madison Park with at least 1 passenger. Officers say Jackson radioed his dispatcher to find out the cost of fare from the bus station to Madison Park. That was the last time anyone heard from Jackson. Around 6:15 this morning, a passerby found Jackson's beaten body in a grassy area called Dagger Hole. Police say he'd been dead for several hours and robbery may have been the motive. Jackson's cab was discovered by state troopers around 1 o'clock this morning on Interstate 65 near Fort Deposit. Authorities say the radio microphone cord had been cut and the taxi was out of gasoline. Workers at the Yellow Cab Company in Montgomery say they were shocked about the slaying. Operator Grover Adams says cab drivers are usually robbed, but not killed. He described Jackson as a good man.
He's just a working fellow. Works good every day and had no problems with him at all. Just a fine man is all I can say. Just a good man.
Kim Davis, WSFA TV News.
This ceiling, like many others in the Montgomery County school system, is covered with a soft material that's suspected to have asbestos in it. There are several ways to tell if the asbestos that's suspected to be in these ceilings is dangerous. The most obvious is here. Water has leaked through from the roof, and it's caused the ceiling to flake off.
We're concerned with the fact that that's falling off. If there's moderate or high activity in the corridor or the classroom, the kids are walking on it, and that's releasing fibers.
If the ceilings or encasing material around these boilers is in good condition, then the danger is minimal. It's the flaking or spreading of the material that causes problems. Woodham has been taking samples and studying all school buildings for the past month. When the samples return from the lab, he'll offer recommendations for improvements to the county school board. Gina Gregory, WSFA TV News.
When Virginia and Grady Goldson of rural Autauga County looked at their newborn daughter on that July day in 1932, they quickly came to the same conclusion. Enough was enough. It was not that they didn't love the little girl that they named Afton Almeida, but the year was 1932. Times were hard, and Alameda was their 10th child. Enough was indeed enough. Tonight, I'd like to tell you a bit more about Afton Almeida Goldson. There was nothing unique about her growing up days on the farm outside of Prattville. No indoor plumbing, no electricity, lots of hand-me-down clothes, but if the Goldsons were poor, it was no big deal because most everybody else was too. Almeida was as cute and perky as a 3-year-old as she is today. And while she never picked much cotton herself, her older brothers and sisters knew all about this back-breaking chore. In the 5th grade, her hair in pigtails, she already had that infectious grin that is still her trademark. And like every high school girl, she practiced for hours hoping to be elected a cheerleader. Almeida Goldson's life in those years centered around her home and her church. Her greatest love was music. She sang in the glee club. She sang often at the First Methodist Church, where the sizable Goldson family filled up a pew and a half every Sunday. Almeida's ambition was to someday become a school teacher, and better than that, she envisioned marrying a Methodist preacher and having a house full of kids. It didn't quite work out that way. Graduating from high school in 1950, Almeida went to work for Continental Gin in Prattville, hoping to save enough money to attend college. It was at Continental that a seemingly minor event changed her entire life. Due to the illness of a fellow employee, Almeida was asked to work for 6 weeks in the first aid room. Those few weeks convinced her that she wanted to be a nurse. Something else was happening to Almeida Goldson during that same time. She sensed that the Lord was leading her toward the Catholic Church. It was because of this that when she finally accumulated enough money to enter nursing school, she chose St. Margaret's Hospital, a Catholic institution. In 1958, shortly after becoming an RN, Almeida Goldson converted to Catholicism. But that was as far as she intended to go. She was still looking for the right guy to come along. She still wanted a husband and kids. She was popular with men, dated often, loved to dress up and go to dances. The game plan for her life didn't include becoming a nun. The Lord had other ideas. Sensing that some of the members of the Daughters of Charity were gently leading her toward the sisterhood, Almeida packed her bags and left. She moved to New Orleans in what she admits was an attempt to hide from God. She found out she couldn't hide from Him. In 1964, Almeida Goldson entered the sisterhood, the Daughters of Charity. As fate would have it, no, I better make that as the Lord would have it, in 1980, Sister Almeida returned to where it all started, St. Margaret's Hospital, as administrator. To tell it like it is, Sister Almeida isn't at all like most of us Protestants imagine nuns to be like. We think of them as being quiet, soft-spoken, moving ever so slowly and reverently in their traditional habits. Sister Almeida compound fractures that image. She darts about St. Margaret's Hospital like a jet-powered water bug. She has a dynamite personality, a smile and a God bless you greeting for everyone she meets. She jokes about her size. As she puts it, she's short on height but makes up for it in breadth and depth. And the sickest patient feels better after a visit from Sister Almeida. Not surprisingly at all, the first thing she does in the morning, the last thing she does in the evening, is to talk with the Lord. He's very special to her, and we have an idea she's very special to Him. Afton Almeida Goldson, Sister Almeida, a very interesting person, indeed she is, also very inspiring.
Did not do that. This commission voted that. I'm today asking them, and we'll put together whatever motion that can be put. I feel at this time that that's the best place to keep those. We've got to put the thrust of this commission back into the rate-making environment, and I think we've got to address what is meaningful regulation. You know, what's the purpose of regulation? It would take better than 4,000 average residential ratepayers to pay the president of the power company's salary for 1 year. That is ridiculous. It would take better than 50,000 average residential ratepayers to pay the salaries and benefits of the officers and directors of Alabama Power Company. What does 50,000 average residential ratepayers mean? 50,000 homes, if you will. 50,000 homes represents a city almost the size of Montgomery, Alabama, or Mobile, Alabama. This is ridiculous, and it cannot continue.
I also would point out that Mr. Camp is simply playing politics within that proposed settlement. Mr. Camp is a politician, and he's running for lieutenant governor, and he's looking for a campaign issue. Now, the commission came to Alabama Power Company, and he asked us to sit down and negotiate a settlement to the rate situation in Alabama. We agreed to do this. Now, all three commissioners agreed during those discussions on this proposed settlement that Alabama Power Company did indeed need a rate increase. All three agreed to that, including Mr. Camp. Also, during those discussions, the commission asked us to make certain concessions to the commission with respect to advertising, executive salaries, and lobbying expenses. We agreed to their conditions in this proposed settlement, and it was the commission in turn that then walked away from that proposed settlement, not the power company.
This game was a scoreless pitching duel through 8.5 innings. Rookie Joe Cowley pitched magnificent for the Braves, giving up only 5 hits through 7. The veteran Ferguson Jenkins equally as impressive for the Cubs. That is until the 8th. Claudell Washington led off the bottom of that inning with this single to right. He then stole second and advanced to third on an error by the catcher. Dale Murphy followed with his 6th home run of the year to break the ice and put the Braves up 2-0. And for the second straight night, Bob Horner followed Murphy with a home run, also his 6th. 4 Atlanta pitchers combined for a 6-hit, 3-0 shutout, Gene Garber getting the win. Braves remain 1/2 game up on the Padres in the National League West. Rick Pons, WSFA TV Sports.
John Woodham says there are bad asbestos problems in many Montgomery County schools, mostly in the older buildings. Leading the list is Georgia Washington, Highland Gardens, Harrison, Goodwin Junior High School, Lee High School, and the Montgomery Area Vocational Center. Some of these schools only have isolated problems like gymnasiums or second floors where the roof has leaked and caused some water damage. Asbestos is dangerous when it's inhaled. These ceilings tend to flake off and particles get into the air. You can see here how easy it is to scratch the material off. Woodham says his study isn't complete yet, but when it is, he'll make recommendations to the County Board of Education on how to make improvements. Gina Gregory, WSFA TV News.